Hi, my name is Erin Stewart, and in today's AI UX Teardown video, we're going to take a look at Gamma, an AI tool for creating presentation slides. Before we jump into the product's onboarding flow, I wanted to take a second to look at what it might look like for somebody to discover a product. So AI tools for presentations are that's a logical use case in generative AI, and as image creation, et cetera, gets better. This one makes a ton of sense. And I think it's one where people are hungry for it to work well. I don't think anybody loves creating PowerPoints. And so, this is a space I'm really eager for it to get to the level that it needs to be to really be successful. A couple of reasons this became top of mind. I don't create a ton of presentation decks. We're not a PowerPoint forward group by any means. But a couple of things come up where I do need them. So especially if I'm speaking at a conference. Currently, I'm using Canva for those. Their Magic Studio AI functionality is, so far, at least the last time I checked it a few weeks ago, is not great. So it does leave a gap where people that are used to creating things there might be looking somewhere else for AI support. To me, that signals that Canva, well, one, I'm sure they're already making huge investments in it, maybe just haven't released the updates, but it also makes me wonder, at what point should they be making acquisitions to help tackle this part of the market and stay competitive, because it's really their space to lose, I think. The other way that our team occasionally makes slides is just in Figma. So if we're already in Figma to do the bulk of our work for a client, that's a natural extension if we just need a few slides to summarize something user research or interview findings, things like that. But with that said, we're going to jump in, and I want to show one other step. So here, I could certainly ask ChatGPT, what's the URL, or take, that kind of thing. So this is the correct one. But what I wanted to show here is that, obviously a lot of people are still using Google to search, myself included. I try to force myself to do the LLM version. So I'm thinking about, obviously there's SEO, and now we have GEO, and I think that's interesting. But of course I get hit with sponsored or paid ads. First, I see a competitor, then I see something that's and I see Beautiful AI, another competitor we just talked about. But then I see something interesting. So before I see the product I'm looking for, I actually see an ad for what might be a ripoff of it. So I'm going to show you, so the one we're looking for, and we will walk through the free trial flow for in a second, is Gamma. And if you say we're talking to a friend and they said, oh, hey, I used this last time, you should check it out. If you hit this website, you'd be like, okay, this is probably what they're talking about. It looks reputable at first glance. Then if I click over to this other one, this to me looks like somebody vibe coded it. That may or may not be true, right? I don't know that, but I think that's really interesting that in this world where people want to embrace this narrative that, okay, now we can have the weekend entrepreneur that vibe codes something while they're sleeping, and they go to market, they run some ads, and all of a sudden you have $1 million or $1 billion company. It's not that simple, right? So when we talk a lot about product strategy and how to stay competitive, the landscape is shifting. I think it's really important if you're an established company or an AI first startup to really think critically about the noise that you're competing with and what does it look like to have longevity. If you're an existing company, this is where you want to double down on that you're established, you're credible, trustworthy, you have the social proof, you have testimonial, maybe videos on your site, nice brand photography, everything that's one or several steps ahead of what you can do quickly with AI or outsourced staffing, things like that. So this is not, what you would want to launch with. It's not bad. And there's a lot of things about it where, wow, if you created this over the weekend, that is pretty cool. But if you're this Gamma, you just have to be conscious that that's happening, and how do you combat that in the market effectively. In their case, I would say, well, if somebody clicks on this ad, it's pretty clear it's not what they're looking for if they've heard of Gamma. But I am kind of surprised that I don't see one of their ads at the top, just to make sure they're not losing that traffic. But yeah, with that said, let's look briefly at their marketing page, and then we'll go straight into their free trial flow. So I scroll down, nice aesthetically, it feels custom, and so far this is a style where I don't feel I see 1,000 ripoffs of it. So that's something you always have to be conscious of with the more AI generated design work these days, and just a more crowded market. If somebody's doing something and they're winning, people are just gonna emulate that winning strategy. But then if you were the person that was at the forefront of it, you've got to push to the next step and stay ahead, right? Here I see presentations, documents, social media, websites. So this is cool in that I was thinking I need this, but the truth is, if I'm creating content, I really need all of this to go together. And so one thing I would be looking for myself, and especially if you think about like workflows where people are running like really efficient sales and marketing with very small teams, like that, like content reuse is really important. And that's a big theme, I think, in general in AI forward tools in the content creation space. So I would have liked to see them draw that out, but we'll see in the product if that's something that they do. Hopefully it is. Social proof, name brands, would want to see more of that farther up, probably. That's like a little trivial, but I think that matters, where if I'm just opening up 5 different tabs and I see this, or I see this with like name brands right here, before I even like scrolled or decided if I was going to keep the tab open, for that matter. I think that's important. Little like walkthrough, how to, straightforward, but at this point, like I kind of know, I just want to test it, right? And I think that that's true. So we talk in general for people. So we talk a lot about how for AI tools, like table stakes, as you have a free trial, I shouldn't have to talk to anybody to check it out. And there's just a lot of curiosity in general. So like I mentioned earlier, I think people want AI to be able to create good slide decks. We are there in some ways, not in others, but really curious to see how they tackle that. So let's go ahead and real quick look at their pricing, and then we'll jump into the free trial. So here, I love that they have a always free tier, some level of credit, so usage based. I think in general, when you lead with like tokens, different numbers, like what do they mean? I think there's still like some level of discomfort there. So in some ways, I want to see teams generalize that more. And like also, I think people are getting sick of like how elaborate these pricing grids get, and like what is the difference, and do I care? And a lot of times there's kind of a gotcha where it's free, but there's something like I really have to have that's like maybe 2 tiers up. And so I think in some ways you can kind of alienate potential like really loyal long-term customers that, in my case, when I try out a tool, I pay for myself. But if I like it, I consider, does it fit into my team's workflow? And then I buy multiple licenses for something. At $8 a seat per month, that's not necessarily cost prohibitive, but it does make me think twice of, well, is this redundant with Canva, which we're already using? And do I want both, or do I replace something? And that like barrier to like, or the hurdle of replacing something like Canva, like I'm not expecting that Gamma would necessarily do that for me, but it would also be interesting to see if they spoke to that directly. Just like kind of anticipate that question, whether it's here or even more forward on the site. But let's go ahead and jump in. So free trial was kind of, aesthetically pleasing, but pretty standard. Sign up. I'm going to pause real quick, get connected via Google. Okay, so here I logged in, and I think I mentioned this before. I have looked at this. So I actually, with the Google account, apparently had tested it 2 years ago, so I'm sure it's very different now. So I will keep rolling with this video recording, but I would obviously typically look for like what is their empty state and how do they welcome me into the product. I do see things like credits being mentioned, stuff that maybe raises more questions than like answers, or like causes distraction before I go to the primary CTA. But let's go ahead through and say create with AI. So here they're hitting me with a decision point. So do I want to paste in text, generate, or import? Honestly, without having seen the next screen, I would typically suggest that unless the experience is dramatically different at this point, if I fork the funnel like through one of these, like if it's really different in terms of experience, that's fine. But I would probably want to just see these options all on like an upload type whatever interface. So kind of think of if I jump into an LLM, Quad, ChatGPT, etc., it's just like one empty space. I start typing in my prompt. I might attach or paste something in. It kind of handles all of that very intelligently. So I think that would be better in terms of just like what the evolving standard or best practices for inputs and sort of this like empty state in terms of like what do you want to create. With that said, let's click paste in text. So and we'll actually jump back and toggle through these so we can answer that question. But here I see paste in text. What would I like to create? Space to type in or drop content in. And then there's some like choices. And then over here, okay, this looks like it's maybe help, but yeah, this is a little underwhelming. It's not bad necessarily, and we really care mostly about the functionality, but for how stylized and like high end everything up until this point looked, this felt like they skipped some steps on like the polish for the product design. Let's go through and so generate. It's the same like kind of top thing. Describe what you want to make and some prompts. So this like is like an almost sort of empty state for an LLM experience. The weight of the sample prompts feels a little off, or just the way it's presented. And then here, import. And so like it hits me with another set of cards, which again feels just kind of like weird that I have to make that decision. Like I can import from URL, upload a file, it just opens my local files, import from Drive, things like that. Okay. So here, let me go back to paste in text, and I did grab text that represents a few slides from a workshop that I did at a conference recently. Those slides I ended up building in Canva, ended up just doing them like from blank slate, got my content, and then like just lightly stylized the slides. So the point of it was just for things that are referencing like instructions for exercises we were doing that were hands-on, or things where we wanted a visual for somebody to look at. So it's pretty simple. But here I'm going to paste in this, and this may not be formatted the way they want. In fact, I can even see like here, what do you want in each card, which that's interesting because I think of slides, not cards. So what is a card? There's a little like terminology friction there. Add 3 dashes between each section, example here. So easy enough. I'm just going to run through and do this. I do wonder if there's a better way they could integrate that like feedback into how I'm working here. But no real friction, right? I think that's fine. So, okay, there's like a small set of slides. What do I want to do with this content? Generate from notes or an outline, turn rough ideas, bullet points, or outlines into beautiful content, summarize long text and documents, preserve this exact text. Okay, that's interesting. I do like that choice. I kind of feel like the way they present that setting is like maybe a little too forward, but there's probably a good reason for that in terms of like how it impacts what the backend is doing next. And then also like just knowing maybe people were skipping over the setting or things like that, but it feels a little off. In this case, we're going to preserve exactly as is, but it is interesting that I could maybe write like long form content and like repackage it. But what I'm still feeling like is missing here is like, what if I want to create all 4 of these? And you know, okay, and here default, fluid, traditional, that's fine. We'll go traditional in this case. But yeah, let's go ahead and, okay, so now I've added this, but it actually says continue to the prompt editor. You can also import files. It's a little confusing because that was like a separate pathway earlier. But no real issues. I also at this point start wondering about, okay, if I have, okay, so I have a bunch of things I've got going on here. So where my mind went next was like, at what point do I just give them like my logo, my headshot, like basic like brand artifacts, or like if I just want to set things like our 3 brand colors or stuff like that. I would typically do very like black and white minimalist aesthetic. So I'm really just looking for something that looks like modern minimalist and doesn't conflict with my brand. And then I usually just like drop my logo, tweak a few things, maybe change the font, and then use photography to kind of make something feel personalized or custom in that respect for our brand. But here, so I'm in the prompt editor, but I don't see, and I see an option to generate, but when I think prompt editor, I think like, where do I type? And here I see additional instructions, but it doesn't feel necessarily like prompting. That's like more of like the context, or if you think of like Claude projects, my instructions, but like the what am I supposed to do with this? That's not clear. So they could improve that. Here I have settings, content. So content, card by card, that's good. And then I can do things like, okay, so preserve. So see this setting. This is more of like what I was thinking would be an option there. Let's see. So visuals, these are all pretty like ugly, honestly, but let's just go something that's not, I don't know, gives me a basic starting point. Image source, AI images, stock photos, web illustrations. So here again, I almost want to be able to just like upload 50 professional photos from past brand photography we have, and like just throw in like team collaboration type photos, but that are Scenic West specific. But this is fine. We'll just like leave it at AI images. I'm curious what that would produce. AI image model. Okay, so I can choose where it's coming from. I'm gonna leave it default for now. I do like this image style here. So like line art, illustration, photorealistic abstracts. So let's do line art. Yeah, line art. Extra keywords. Okay, so here it's like modern, minimalist, trendy design. I don't know, something like that. Format, presentation, cool. So again, like it never gave me a chance to just like describe what I want. Maybe it is here, but let's go ahead and hit generate and see what this does. Okay, so now that the slides have generated, let's take a look. So it started with the kind of black background, white text. That's fine. It's using basic typography. We can dig into that later. I'm not seeing at first glance where I changed the font, but that would again go back to like, oh, here, card styling. Yeah, still kind of like seeking the where can I just give it my like basic brand elements and have that incorporated. The line art stuff is fine. I'd probably go back and switch this so we'll look for editing flows there and try maybe like the abstract or something else. But then I have things, so like workshop goals, I had 4 bullet points. So here I said like keep, I'm thinking about like why I did this. So I said preserve the text, but it did not respect that. And it added these like headings and then it expanded on the content, which like when it's, you know, you think about like goals, agenda, like kind of the snappy intros, things like that, like that's not what I want. And so like things like here, I would want, you know, this would be my headshot. That's fine. I can swap that in, or I don't know. I guess it could have been an illustration, but, you know, this is like not stuff I need. I really just want like the slide that just throws my contact info on it, moves on very quickly. Here, I really just want like here's your 4 or 5 goals for the day. And then same thing here. It's like this layout, like again, is kind of taking liberties, but in a way that as a design professional, I don't think it's a good layout for it. So that's a little like frustrating because again, this could be pretty close if they had just really adhered to the preserve my content piece. So this is where you get into where it's like, it ends up just being faster to paste if you write your content in a doc and then you just paste it in slide by slide and like do a little bit of formatting yourself. And then like honestly in Canva, like the idea that you can just like toggle between different layouts or themes makes it pretty easy to like level it up or just like take elements of a theme and maybe not apply it to all slides, but maybe for your like section slides and your cover slide, things like that. So that's been my workflow most recently, and just feeling like the AI tools create more problems or they really don't speed me up, if I'm being honest. I think that's a really important thing to think about if you are creating an AI tool or adding AI features. It's like even things like I recently had a reaction where I opened up a Slack thread that I hadn't followed, and it popped up at the top of it a summary. I haven't triggered that often, so I don't know if it's a new feature just for like the specific organization I was looking at, or it knew the behavior that I hadn't looked at the thread. But it was like a summary at the top, and I honestly felt like I had a reaction where it was like annoying to me. I was like, okay, great, I get it. Every tool can now summarize content, but like that doesn't mean I want that in that context. So again, I think there's going to just be a lot of like there's AI hype and curiosity, but like what will stand the test of time is going to have to actually save time. Obviously, there's like a first to market, early to market strategy here. I fully expect that this tool will keep getting better, but so far, like if I were trying this in my real workflow and considering to purchase it, which I kind of was, this is a little off-putting to start. This one is interesting. So when I pasted this in, I had like the heading, the 4 items, which I'm looking, yeah, they still embellish this a little bit. So it's not really my words exactly, but I did include just to see if it would pick up the distinction. Like I put 4 bullet points and then like in italics, a discussion question. And it did pick up like similar to how we actually styled it in the real slides, this like little sidebar call out thing, which in the full deck for the real workshop content, we had that pattern kind of throughout the slides, whereas like a discussion thing that we paused and talked about as a group within the room. Like what you created, create something else, back to prompt. So this is interesting because I was like obviously naturally looking for editing functionality. It looks like here I've got some tools within, and I'm curious if I can. So it kind of feels like it maybe would want me to go here, which this is very easy to like miss, honestly. So that I would change that. And then here, let's just go back and do something like make them abstract. And even say keep text exactly as is. I don't know. Like I thought I already did that, but we'll see. Another thing that I think people are, it's no longer novel and it's honestly like causes friction is when an LLM or generative AI content gets overly embellished or robust, and it's like you really just wanted 5 short bullet points, but it writes a whole thesis on something. Like that's frustrating. And then this is interesting to kind of watch. So I put abstract, but there's still like these grayscale things, and I don't know if I really read that as abstract. It did interestingly give, this is, I mean, I would drop my headshot in. This is a pretty like boring layout, but let's see. It would be cool if there was a way, try new layout. Okay, so it's like here, let's go ahead and spend the credits. Okay, so it's going to say for 5 credits, I can go in and this is kind of functionality I was expecting to see where it's like, which one do I actually want? So like, let's say we just want this. I don't really care. Okay, so we switched that. Workshop goals, it did a better job of, let's double check, is this exactly the same? Yeah, these are correct, and there's 4 of them, that's fine. I might prefer just linear, but this is, I guess, acceptable. Let's see. Okay, like that. I guess I can hit that. Not working, but I think it would get old if like every time I have, that's not so interesting. Okay, so we already got an error state. So that like gives me pause about like performance and reliability a little bit as well, because it's like everybody knows that feeling where you're like, oh man, I need to make one edit or add one slide, and it's like down to the wire right before presentation or right before something needs approval. And like if the tool crashes and you can't get to it, like that would be pretty bad, right? So that would lose customers for sure. This again is like the same weird like 5-block layout, but it's like uglier. So at this point, like I would just move on and not use this. This is worse, not better. Less images, things like that. So honestly, like this doesn't save time for me, so I feel like I would just stick with Canva at this point, because if you have a content outline, you paste in the slides, it's pretty quick to like add my branding, maybe toggle through some themes, pull some elements that I like in terms of treatment, drop in my own photography, stuff like that into placeholders. And so like at that point, I'd rather spend time just doing it from scratch. But that said, I'm also of a design background, so what's easy for me to do at a higher level of aesthetic and like is expected of my brand, I think, is maybe much harder for somebody in a different role. So I also sympathize with like, this might really be great for teams that don't have the design know-how or time to do it. That like, the truth is this is good enough. It's just not what I would want to present at like a conference, if that makes sense. But if you're doing like internal presentations or content, like if you're like HR or training or things like that, like depends on the standards of the organization you're working for. But like there's a lot of scenarios where I just need 5 slides to put up in a room, and we're going to talk about it, and we're never going to look at the slides again. I would say that this fits that use case still. Let's, for the sake of just closing the loop on this like what I assume is a ripoff competitor. For fun, let's just go through at least like the beginning of their flow. So here it honestly has better. I'm already signed in here. It might have done, I'm in an incognito window. So honestly, it might have done that for the Gamma app, the core Gamma app as well. But here I can sign if I want to. Let's see what it lets me do from the beginning. So it is true. This is the idea of what I would expect, but it's just like not finished, if that makes sense. So this is where you can use a lot of AI prototyping, design, coding tools to get a first version or prototype really quickly. But it is, to me, like a huge differentiator, still going to be that final mile and leveraging design expertise, product strategy expertise, what our team does every day at Scenic West, to take this and make it 2 steps better, right? So the way that we're even working with, especially more like AI first early stage startups, has definitely shifted to being that strategist up front, final mile adjustments partway through the process, but really that if you have somebody that's in that expert role managing the workflow and knowing when to use AI and when not, you can architect really great product discovery, design, development processes. My background is less on the engineering side, so I'll leave that to engineering experts. We have a lot of great partners that we work with on the dev agency side. But again, would emphasize like this historically wouldn't have been like a bad, maybe like MVP, but it really doesn't cut it currently. However, they are doing some things, right? So the way that I drop in here feels a little bit more like an LLM tool. That said, as I'm saying that, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, what would I do next? And let's see, it says, generate a perfect presentation title here. I mean, I already have that, so that feels weird. Like I really, honestly, let's just see what happens if I paste in the same. Okay, now it wants me to hit this. I already X'd out of that, so okay, that's weird. Like things like this, like green, that's rough. The animation on the login button doesn't really make sense. I imagine we'll probably see a lot of other little like minor funky things that kind of show that it's like not a quality product. So yeah, let's paste this in. Okay, it's already more, but like AI slides. So, okay, we'll just do this because like it told me I could only have 100 characters, which is weird. Okay, so like that is the title, but it's giving me other options, but it's like, you started your work with the help of AI, but like, here's the outline. What do you think? Weird. Okay. Oh my goodness. And then it's like, I mean, things that wouldn't even to me be acceptable design from 15 years ago. And like, it's like, oh my goodness, where's the minimalist black and white? So I think my least favorite thing of like, so Canva like does templates very well. Like they obviously got that right, which is exciting. Okay, now once we upgraded Pro, but like these start looking like the tech ones, like kind of, you know, you could grab any of these and they look like an AI presentation, which part of that also makes me hate them in that respect. Cause it's like every AI tool is like black with these like purplish, like cosmic sort of aesthetics. And that's changing quickly too, because you also have like the LLMs where it's like a very neutral black and white aesthetic, things like there's a lot of things going on where people are going to start associating certain brand styling with something that's created by AI, a ripoff of something overplayed, or it's like you can kind of start telling where the inspiration came from. So creativity, I think, goes a long way. Here, okay, so we're going to drop off here. Like this isn't, well, let's go ahead for the kicks here. We'll do. Okay, and this is like my least favorite thing that AI tools do, where it's like, you didn't even ask me what I want, and now you're creating a dog-themed presentation about AI for product discovery. Like, that's ridiculous, right? So to me, this is like, I don't know, this is kind of rough, but it makes me think of like, oh, some college kid built this in a class and they hooked up all these integrations and things that you can kind of do with AI, but they didn't think about, okay, who's my customer? What am I trying to solve for them? And what does success look like? Because success for when I have a professionally written outline for slides, and I just want to create the slides really quickly and drop my branding in and like be done with it. The idea that I can go from text that honestly maybe I wrote like on my phone while I was like commuting or something into a finished presentation, that's huge. But that presentation cannot be made up content. In this case, like I have no idea where this came from. And like, obviously, like it really leans into the dogs. And like, I picked that on purpose because it kind of, I think, makes the point of like, this isn't, it's like fun to watch it build something, but I can't actually use it. So that's where your curiosity about AI and testing a tool like this, you see this like really steep. So it's like you see maybe a healthy conversion rate for your free trial. And then you might even see people convert to like the first month or two. And then you see like a dramatic drop off because it was like people just experimenting with something and then they realize it doesn't really like actually move the needle for them. And so they cancel the subscription or they found something better, whatever the story is. I hope you guys enjoyed this AI UX teardown of Gamma app. We'll pop back to their site for our closeout. If there is another AI tool you would like me to do a teardown of, feel free to drop it in the comments. I also have a free lightning lesson hosted by Maven that is on September 15th, where we'll talk more about applying AI tools and workflows to your product discovery process. Be sure to check out my video preview about that, and I'll drop the sign up link for that lightning lesson in the description of this video.